Greetings, adventurers. This is DM Kurt. The other day, I was listening to the Basic Experts video on mimetic rivalry, and it's about the competition and jealousy that can be sparked when you're in a somewhat competitive space with others. And it was actually a pretty good video. But he mentioned that the BX puzzle has been solved, and that's a reference towards the OSR, where a lot of people have rewritten one version of OE, D&D, the old basic sets, the little brown books, the really oldest rule sets, and they make their own games that are kind of another rewrite and another rewrite and another rewrite. These same really old games. Well, that kind of got me thinking. Maybe some of the problem that's going on here is the fact that we're dealing with these games were created, they were kind of prototypes. And the game has, role-playing games in general, have evolved since then. So, what are some of the mechanical rules that are obsolete? And they were fine at the time, but there's just no need to include these rules in a modern game going forward. So I asked that question online, and I got a handful of answers, some of which I could see, and some of which kind of honorable mentions. So the honorable mentions first. Some people felt that alignment was an obsolete rule. Well, or maybe the 9-point alignment, and we should just go back to 3-point. The law and neutral chaos instead of the 9-point alignment system, or the whole thing is pointless. That's going to get an honorable mention because that's a little more opinion-based, and it's not fully... It is a mechanic, but it also kind of informs your setting a little bit, depending on if you go with its wide cosmology, and it's a little more philosophical. Yeah. Ability scores, and I'm just quoting this directly, ability scores or similar stats that don't provide anything directly, but rather grant a modifier or derived value for every X amount of the OG score, with the numbers in between being empty scores that granting nothing, all caps nothing. They should be just replaced with the modifier or whatever. That's an opinion. So with like D&D, let's say 5e, with a 16 or a 17 in a stat, you get the same modifier. So why have the 16 or 17 be different from each other? Just write down the bonus. I think it's a +3. The 18 being a +4. Yeah, that tracks. So kind of the reason is making it more granular when you're trying to bump up attributes to get modifiers. I could see that as something you don't really need. You know, you could write a new game without that, but I don't know if it's fully obsolete. So let's say my strength is no longer a 16, my strength is a +2. Strength, +2. No defined value, just +2 is what you get on your bonuses whenever you go to roll a strength check. I could see that, as long as your strength itself is not a difficulty for someone else to try to break. Okay. Item weight for encumbrance. Item weight for encumbrance being obsolete. Encumbrance has been bone of contention for some people. A lot of players that I've met don't want to track it because they feel it's just too much math, it's too fiddly. And this isn't just modern players. I mean, back from the 80s, I was dealing with players who said, well, I don't want to track all that numbers. I'm not filling out tax forms. I'm not an accountant. I'm not filling out tax forms. This is resource management as a struggle for the character to try to overcome. You know, you can't just walk out with 6 million gold coins out of the dragon's treasure hoard. You're going to have to figure out, you're only going to get out what you can carry so you don't break the economy. or you're going to have to go hire wagons to come back. You know, your character's having to engage with the environment. More engagement, which is more opportunities to do role play. Now you got to go talk to a guy to rent some wagons out, and do you tell him where the horde is? And then once they've picked up their first load, everybody knows where the horde is. So it's going to get cleaned out behind you unless you get out all you can. So there's sort of a spark for more things to happen in the campaign. So encumbrance in that situation matters. You're going to carry all this stuff. Now you got to cross a river. You know, now you have a mechanical problem. You have an engineering thing to solve. A lot of the first and second edition games I played, engineering was its own problem within itself. Dungeoneering involved engineering. You know, we're going to spike this area. We're going to spike this particular wall, and then we're going to put a pulley over there, and then we're going to lower a line over here. And that's going to help us get across this chasm and then haul stuff up. Some of the better answers I got. Racial bonuses for attributes when you don't roll down the line. So what they're talking about there as a potential obsolete rule is the elf gets +2 to dexterity. And so I'm assigning my numbers wherever I want. I'm just going to use that 2, and because I get 2 there, I can put a slightly lower number into dexterity because I'm putting them wherever I want and still get the same result, so my slightly higher roll goes somewhere else. So that kind of semi-nullifies the bonus on dexterity that the elf gets because I can just kind of work around it. Because I really wanted a high int for this character, well, I can put the higher int number into int, and then I can put something lower in a dex and still have a perfectly fine dex. Okay. Saving throws by attack type. Log truck. Okay, saving throws by attack truck. Saving throws by attack type. Okay, I have a saving throw versus poison. I have a saving throw versus rod, staff, wand. One versus spells, one versus breath weapon. One versus death magic. So now I have to have my attributes over here, and then I have to have my saving throw chart versus attack type over here. So that's an additional chart that has to be on my sheet. Instead of just poison is a con save. Area effect stuff is a dex save because you try to duck behind cover. And mind affecting magic is going to affect a mental stat. Roll a mental ability check. There's your save. So you're eliminating an entire chart. Okay, I can see why we don't really need saving throws by attack type. Okay. Dead at 0 hit points, the binary fine and dead switch. I could see that. Now currently we've dealt with this before. So in some games, you're totally fine when you're at maximum health, and then you get weaker, suffering penalties as you get injured, and then you go to dead. And then from dead, some games will have a mandatory, some kind of timer between knocked out and dead. You're bleeding out. In second edition, we were using a dead at -10. So if you're killed, you go to 0 or negative whatever hit points, and then every round you lose another point until you hit -10, and that was a timer that would allow someone to bind your wounds. You're incapacitated, but you are bleeding out, and somebody else has to stop what they're doing and go help you. In 5e D&D, you go to 0 hit points, you don't go beyond that, you just go to 0, and then you have this best 3 out of 5. So it's going to take you 3 to 5 rounds to die. And that's going to be shortened if either you're stabilized by a friend, you roll a lucky 20. And it's going to be solved. Anyway, you know what I mean. So it could go either way within 5 rounds or less. Okay. But there you're taking away, I could see that. Descending armor class. Now I had to tell people, look, just don't talk to me about don't give me descending armor class as my question for obsolete rules. Because if I didn't, about half the responses would be descending armor class is silly and not necessary and it's obsolete, yada, yada, yada. Who needs THAC0? And then there's an argument about THAC0. But yeah, I can see getting rid of descending armor class. We only do it because it's tradition, in our older games. So positive armor class, it's how many points better than 10. That's a target number. You roll, you add your bonuses. Do you hit that target number or not? Descending armor class, well, okay, I roll and I add my bonuses. Do I hit my target number? Well, my target number is my THAC0 minus their AC. So I'm adding another step. Is it complicated? No. It is not complicated, and it should not slow combat down. It really shouldn't. We are talking about the ability to subtract 2-digit numbers from each other. 1 or 2-digit numbers. Your THAC0's a 21, the other guy's got a 5 AC, then you need to roll a 16 or better. Well, the 21 is, that's your double-digit number, and we're talking about third grade mathematics. Third grade, okay? If you're reading D&D books, especially first edition AD&D, you're well above a third grade reader. So you should be well above a third grade mathematician. And yet, I still see grown adults struggling with, well, what do I do with a subtraction problem? It's like, dude, you got a college degree and I don't. So, you should be able to do basic subtraction. But yeah, I'll go with descending AC not really being necessary. It's a little counterintuitive for a few people. It shouldn't be, but somehow it manages to be. Different experience point tables by class. So, again, I'm going to be picking on first edition AD&D. And Castles and Crusades, hey, I love you, but, you're doing it too. Second edition D&D, same. It should be a lot easier to have just one XP table to rule them all, Make your classes somewhat balanced against each other. And then multi-classing becomes a lot easier of an option instead of having some really goofy rules to do so. Castles and Crusades, love you, but your multi-classing kind of sucks. The argument's going to be made that multi-classing is usually just some power gamer move that has nothing to do with storyline or their actual character development. Fine, whatever. Race as class. Okay. Basic D&D, right? If you wanted to play Beckme, you're playing an elf. Okay, the elf is a fighter mage, essentially. You want to play a halfling? The halfling is a thief. Log truck's back. So the dwarf is just a fighter, and they added some ability to detect sloping passageways and new construction stonework. Okay. So every hobbit you meet's gonna be of the same profession. Every elf you meet is gonna be of the same general type. I can see some limitations, but that's something that not everybody wants to do. So I want to play, does this mean that elves don't have gods? Because they can't be clerics, they can only be fighter mages? Does this mean that the halflings don't have gods they worship because none of them can be clerics? Well, they can, but those are all NPCs, and they never travel outside the region. They never leave the homeland. Well, in that case, the humans clerics can because they are crusading. I mean, you could make the argument that yes, but I don't know. Those are some of the rules that people seem to think are obsolete. And I look at, what if you wrote another version of old school D&D, but you updated about half a dozen of those rules? Let's say you had saves by attribute type, ascending AC, same XP chart across the board for all the classes, 3-point alignment, encumbrance by like gear slots, so everybody gets like 2 items. Pretty simple. Or 10 items. No racial bonuses to stats. You know, instead of having a whole page of mechanics for elves or dwarves, you just give them, hey, you get like one little bonus ability of some kind for being these things, but you don't have a whole page of mechanical plus this minus that, and you get to do this other thing, and you get to do this other cool thing, yada yada yada, across the board. You'd have Shadow Dark, basically. You know, something rules light and quick and easy. Just what I got. DM Kurt out.